Okay, it looks like we're going live on YouTube, which is good. And we'll give it a few more seconds before we get started. Got a few more people joining us. Hi, JC. How are you?
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Igor. All right, so we're live on YouTube, so we'll just get things started, and I'm sure we'll have a few more folks joining us pretty soon as well. So, all right, welcome everyone to our July community call. I can't believe it's already been 4 weeks since our call in June. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, hopefully you're enjoying the nice summer weather. And we'll get things started. Another reminder on the code of conduct. So, I mean, obviously we want to have a welcoming and friendly environment, and you can find the full details of our code of conduct at the code of conduct markdown file in our repo. And what we'll discuss today, we have a pretty full agenda. We have several community news that we want to share, and also like to formally introduce some of our recent hires to Cube.js. And like we always do in the first month of each quarter, we want to review what we accomplished in the previous quarter, and then also share what we plan to work on in Q3 for Cube.js. And we have several product updates and feature demos. I list a Q&A at the end, but like always, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt us, like unmute yourself or type questions on either Zoom chat or live stream chat. Yeah, we'll take questions as we go along. All right, so we'll get things started on the community news front. The first item, I mean, we had a really good like a panel discussion on pre-aggregations last month, and we talked about providing more onboarding resources for our marquee feature pre-aggregations. What we're planning on doing is to have an office hour / tutorial type of webinar about 5 weeks from today on August 18th on Wednesday. It will be a 2-hour session starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And the proposed agenda, we listed some of those here. Like why and when to use pre-aggregations, how to get started, some tips and tricks, including like using this in production. And obviously we want to have ample time for Q&A. We have people like Ryan and Pavel, our CTO, that will be participating in the webinar. So I want you to, I mean, for now, we don't have a registration site that's up and running yet, but we'll have this up and running shortly, this certainly within a week. But in the meantime, if you want to block off your calendar for August 18th for a couple of hours, that would be great. And once the registration page is up, we'll have a few like optional questionnaire for you to fill out. Simple questions like, which database you use, your prior experience with pre-aggregations and specific topics you want us to cover. So that'll definitely help us prepare for the webinar. You shouldn't take it too long. Those optional questions, if you can fill them out, they will be tremendously helpful. And if you can't join the session live for other commitments or time zone issues, fear not, because we'll, like we always do with monthly calls, we'll have those recorded and posted on the YouTube channel. So you'll be able to view it after the event. And as a fun incentive for people who dial into the webinar, we'll have some fun swags that we'll ship out. So stay tuned for more details. We'll obviously announce it on like a social channels like Twitter and also on Slack. So once we have the registration up and running in a few days, we'll make another announcement. Just wanted to give you a heads up. So that's it for the webinar. The next topic is, you probably saw a Slack announcement from Igor, who's online right now, about the awesome tools that we announced a couple of weeks ago. So let me stop sharing, Igor, and I'll turn things over to you. And I think you're just gonna, demonstrate the site and share the details, right? So let me stop sharing and I'll let you run with it.
Yeah, thank you, Ray, and thanks for having me at this community call. I'll be happy to present to you what we launched and tell you how every developer using Cube can use this to develop better apps with Cube. Okay, so here's a story behind this new website, new tool that you can use when developing apps with Cube. Many times I encountered, and many other folks from on the Cube dev team encountered questions on our Slack and other channels about what would be the best developer tool to be used with Cube, because as you know, like Cube being an API layer for data, has this ability to interface with practically every data visualization tool in the market with different you can generate reports on top of it, you can build different front ends on top of it, and the question is how to do the choice, how to pick the right tool for your task. So maybe you saw that we surveyed our Cray community a few months ago and studied the different scenarios and criteria used to choose database tools for apps built on top of Cube, and we learned that obviously among those criteria, often developers think about like whether this thing will be like will have the support for a specific framework, whether it has a support for TypeScript or just regular like JavaScript, whether it's paid or free or open source or proprietary, and also like whether it has support for specific data visualization types, like will I be able to to draw a bar chart or create a data grid or do some 3D visualization, something like that. So here's the website that solves this, answers this question, that solves this issue once and for all, or at least I hope so. So as you can see, you can pick the options that you'd like to view only charting libraries that work nicely with, let's say, Angular and have obviously TypeScript support and are open source. And among their the long list of tools present on this website, you'll see those that match your criteria, which basically make the short list of candidates that you might want to evaluate. And if you drill down here just and observe what we have on this page, you can see that what is the version of Chart.js, how the TypeScript support is provided, like with definitely type definitions or the DTS files bundled into with the source code in the repository. You can see what would be the default visualization that you're going to get with this tool, and also, and that's really interesting, and I'm really proud to have this on this website, that you can see whether this tool is particularly popular in the community and whether it's well maintained and supported. Like, we can see that just 10 days ago was the last release of Chart.js, and that's probably one sign that this product is pretty much healthy. We see a really huge number of contributors for the source code, but maybe you should have a look at the issues when considering using this product, because among those issues that's older than 1 year, you could probably find one that you're gonna file like maybe in a month after you start development with this. So and also in the bottom, you have at least something to start development with, just visual tutorials and also community guides that might help you to connect Chart.js to Cube and start developing things with that. And of course, if you encounter any problems, you also have links to get help with. And I believe that given that we have a lot of bright and amazing folks in our Cube community that have vast knowledge about the different data visualizations. Anyone encountering any issues with those tools, anyone's is always welcome in the Cube community. So yeah, I believe that's one of the best ways to get help and resolve any issues if they arise. So that's basically it. I encourage everyone who are like in search of a proper database tool, like maybe a data grid or a 3D tool. I encourage anyone to have a look at this website and see whether this is something that can help you do the right choice. And also feel free to provide your feedback and suggest adding more tools. If you have like great experience working with something which is not present on this website, you can always just scroll down and go to the GitHub, where we have a lot of proposals for adding more tools. And yeah, I encourage you to do so if you feel like there is something which may be valuable for other developers in the Cube community or in the wider community. I will be happy to add this to this awesome.cube.dev website. So that's it. And yeah, please enjoy using it.
All right. Thanks, Igor. Yeah, I think you mentioned in the Slack channel too when you announced it. This is probably along with pre-integration, so I pretty frequently ask questions. So thanks for addressing that for the community, and also on the chat for both Zoom and the live stream, I added a link to Igor's post on Discourse. I mean, that's another place where if you have any comments on the site or the tool, you can leave any comments in addition to opening issues. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and just
cool.
I'll briefly answer to a question by JC that we have in the Zoom chat. JC, thanks for asking about that. At every page, like every tools page, have this section in the bottom which helps you to get started with. And yeah. Not every tool have a piece of content how to get started with Cube, but I believe that we'll be having more of those. So every developer who has data exposed via we are like the API layer made with Cube, will be able to connect it to the data visualization tool of choice. That's it.
You had clicked through to an actual tool. I see it now. I was looking for it on the bottom of the main page. Thanks.
Of course. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, and then I think JC and Ricardo, you both probably provided feedback in the early days, so definitely appreciate that too. All right, so next up we have, Jonathan and Jordan. I mean, I think you both were on like a previous calls, but I don't think you introduced yourself to the community. So I want to give you a chance to introduce yourselves and talk about the exciting Cube Cloud that we have coming. John, do you want to share this? Do you want me to share this, or you do that already? So never mind. So all right, I'll let you go. Cool.
Hey everybody, good morning, at least on the west coast of the US. I'm John Cowperthwaite. I joined the company about 2 months ago as our head of marketing. And I've had the privilege of working with a couple of you, in particular the heroes, but it's a delight to finally be more widely introduced. My primary responsibility is to bring greater attention to this community, what you've built by your community contribution, what's been validated by all of the community's engagement. And it's exciting. I literally intend for us to take over the world. By way of bio, I was the head of marketing for the JavaScript registry NPM. And as I remember it, that became the world's largest community of open source software development because they gave me a budget for puppies. And we're going to test this hypothesis by bringing puppies to conferences once they let me leave the state of California again. But also more seriously, we grew that community because we had a community that was on the love and the contributions of people contributing updates to docs, contributing use cases, adding more voices to our community newsletter. We should expect to see initiatives like that as we try to bring more attention to what Cube can build and what you've already done for us. The primary reason that I'm here is something that we're going to be making a lot more noise about a little bit later this summer and into the fall. You might have already seen the little purple banner across our website, but that's Cube Cloud. This will be fully managed cloud-hosted Cube.js applications. We intend for this to be the easiest way to build data analytics applications on top of your cloud data. Like I said, watch this space. We don't have a lot to announce just yet. One of the reasons is because before we can announce it, we have to finish building it. And before we can do that, we need your help. This is not just going to be a commercial product. This is also available to members of the Cube open source community. But how we get there from here depends upon contributions from members. I'm going to let Jordan, who's coming up in a second, tell you a little bit more about what we need specifically next for Cube Cloud, but I want you to stay in touch with me. My contact information is up on this slide. I'll also put it into the chat as soon as I'm finished talking to you here. Find me on Twitter, find me in our Slack, drop me an email if you still use email. I want to know what you've built. I want to know what you'd like us to build. I'd like to know what we can work on together, because we really do have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm looking forward to making us the next giant thing in open source.
Awesome, thank you. Jordan, do you want to, like, let me share the slides because it just have one slide.
Yeah, if you could share, because I only have one.
Yep, no worries. All right, go for it.
It just made it really big on my screen. I hate that Zoom does that. Hey, everybody. Just like John, I'm relatively new to the Cube team, and my role is, in quotes, general manager of Cube Cloud, but really it's a fancy term for just saying that my job is to make Cube Cloud as close of a direct reflection of what Cube.js users want and hope to see in a potential managed version of the software. And John did a really good job of clarifying that this isn't just for Fortune, whatever size company. We're expecting a lot of community members to take advantage of the free version that we'll be offering it at a much smaller scale. And so on top of all the great things John mentioned, my main goal right now is to get in contact with as many members of this community to get an understanding of what this product could really be like and benefit your team. So that is this slide right here showing Cube Cloud design partners. And so we are recruiting users at a large scale, at a small scale, really anyone that sees a benefit in having a managed version of Cube from different various use cases that would love to use the product. So there's a couple of benefits to both sides. So obviously we get to hear firsthand from the users, you guys, exactly what it is that makes Cube.js so great and what are the things that would make it even better in a cloud managed version. But there's actually a lot of benefits for those who are also going to be participating with us. So you'll be able to get hands-on integration and testing of the cloud product before it becomes GA later on this year, as was mentioned. Your impact, your requests for what you want to see in the product will be directly impacting our roadmap and our planning as we continue to iterate on the cloud version of the product, as well as the open source product in the various versions after we GA. And that last bullet point is just to really emphasize that if you are dedicated to providing us feedback, and we'll be dedicated to providing you with all the insight that you need and the differences and educating you on what Cube Cloud is, your stamp and your specific use case could actually be one of the main purposes that people that aren't using the product right now would use it in the future. So, there's a lot more here, and I would love to share it with all of you. So you could reach out to us. Me specifically, pretty simple, Jordan at CubeDev is my email. And then you can go to cube.dev/cloud to get more information on signing up, and there's some options in there to fill in more information about your specific use case and how you plan on using the product. So we'd love to hear back from you. And again, feel free to reach out to me directly, Jordan at cube.dev, if you have any questions. That should be it.
Cool, thanks. And Jordan, you're on Slack too, right? Because I was just double checking. I think they handle Jordan
Yes.
Phillips with 1L.
Yes.
So yeah, if people I think a lot of people are some people just tend to go to Slack first. If that's a tool of your choice, you can find Jordan there as well.
I'm on Slack as many hours of the day that I'm awake, basically. So, and I'm a part of the community as well. So if you're in general or introductions and heard about this and just want to at me and just say, hey, Jordan, provide a couple more bullet points or information about what is this design partnership program, feel free to do so. It's an easy way to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Yeah, and I mean, I think we talked about this as well. Like even the design partnership program, this is like we're in the early days. If you have feedback on the process and the program itself, that's more than welcome. I mean, we want to have pretty much everything open to community feedback and involvement. So yeah, definitely
100%.
definitely looking forward to this. All right, thank you, John and Jordan. Great to have you on the call. All right, so next on to Q3 roadmap. And Brian, I guess I'll stop sharing. I'll let you drive the screen.
Sure.
Would that work?
Sounds good.
So
yep.
Well, there we go.
Cool, thank you. All right. And as I'm going through this, by the way, if anyone has any questions, please just blurt it out or type in the chat. I'm happy to make this a two-way dialogue with respect to roadmap. So first off, happy summer, everyone. It's a new quarter. And with that, we'd like to go over all the wonderful things that we've accomplished in Q2, and then talk a little bit about our plans for Q3. So first, I want to say that pre-aggregations was our #1 priority. We made Cube Store more robust and easy to use, as many of you know. And we also improved the pre-aggregations API and getting started experience around pre-aggregation. So all of these things will hopefully lead to greater adoption of pre-aggregations across the board. And then also spend a lot of time focusing on improving the experience with Docker. So right now, running Cube.js on Docker is pretty much on par with the node or serverless workflow. You can define, for example, you can define your database connection in the UI upon startup with Docker, and you can define all of your environment variables beforehand in a config file on the mount volume. We do expect that usage with Docker will keep growing. I think we're pretty much almost at 50-50 now in terms of users opting to run on Docker versus Node. Curious to know if anyone here has switched from Node to Docker, and if so, let me know how that's been. Playground also was something that we continued to improve upon, and we've done a lot of work on error messages, the search function for query members, which is a very neat feature, the rollup designer, which I'll talk, and I don't want to give away too much here because I will also want to show later in a demo some of these things, but a lot of great work to improve Playground was completed. The only thing that we unfortunately weren't able to much progress on, which we had originally planned for Q2, was streamlining the database drivers. And this was work that we intended to help kind of expand our supported database types on Cube. However, pre-aggregations and the overall developer experience, those were our top priorities, and we stuck to them. It's also looking unlikely like we will be able to pick up this database driver work in Q3, this current quarter. So please let us know if you are blocked by this, and I'm happy to discuss with you what we can possibly do. So with that, I'll move on to Q3. A lot of interesting things that we've got planned for this quarter, and I'm quite excited to be talking about them. First off is refresh worker. So again, on the theme of pre-aggregations, the refresh worker is a key component for pre-aggregations. The better this is, essentially, the fresher your data will be in your pre-aggregations. So our current plan is we're going to introduce 2 different processes, which will be what which will comprise refresh worker. Why do you ask? Well, long story short, this will allow us to create sort of an observable queue of refresh jobs on your pre-aggregation. So this will make it easier to kind of manage your pre-aggregation refreshes. We'll also introduce concurrency setting defaults so that none of you will hopefully have to become your own super database expert to know what are the typical concurrency settings that should work for your own particular type of database. And then finally, we'll introduce support for pre-aggregations which use rolling windows. So yeah, a lot of interesting things for pre-aggregations related to the refresh worker here. Also, some other pre-aggregation related improvements include things like the rollup designer. That's a particularly exciting one, and I'll be demoing that one in a bit. So this will hopefully make it easier for folks to add pre-aggregations to their schema. We'll also, Docker's giving me notification, sorry. We'll also be improving some of the error message, such as one for the rollup only mode deployments of Cube.js. So that's when you've configured Cube.js to only execute queries that have respective pre-aggregations. In this case, we wanted to make it more clear that if you run a query without a pre-aggregation, you should know why it doesn't execute instead of just getting this ambiguous error that this query couldn't execute. So things like that are things that here and there that we could improve on with respect to the error messages. And all of this we hope will lead to much greater usage of pre-aggregations overall. And we think that's quite important to accelerate your queries to your satisfaction and to your customer satisfaction. The last focus area for us in Q3 is around big data use cases. So the really big data sets that benefit the most from Cube.js, in our opinion, are typically BigQuery, Redshift, Snowflake, data warehouses and query engines. We will therefore be improving these particular database drivers and addressing some of the outstanding issues that we've encountered here. For example, we will be casting all numerical values as strings. I know that sounds quite drastic. And why are we doing that? Well, JavaScript and JSON don't always support some of the numerical types like big integer. So to keep things consistent, we're casting everything as strings. And this means that Cube.js clients, of course, should convert these values back to numbers. And of course, this is a fairly big change, but we believe it's for the best overall. We will, of course, be giving lots of heads up as this comes down the pipe. Any questions so far about the roadmap for Q3? This is kind of our plan for the next 3 months. If not, I'll go right to some demos and pass it over to Hassan, who will be talking a little bit about some of the product updates. Hassan, do you want to share your screen or should I just keep going?
If you wouldn't mind, keep going.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, here to announce some of the product updates with Ryan. I'm going to start with listing out some of the upcoming deprecations. So we've been trying to simplify our terminology and improve the semantics of various properties, configuration properties across Cube.js. And some of these changes are as follows. In the pre-aggregation definition, where you would have defined dimension references and measure references, you can simplify them to dimensions and measures. The same goes for rollups and segment references too. You can skip the whole references part of them. So hopefully it's just a little bit less typing for you to do when you write out your pre-aggregations. Refresh range start and end are now known as build range start and build range end, just again to more clearly describe what exactly these variables are for. And query transformer is now query rewrite. All of the old variable names still will continue to work for now. We just wanted to highlight these so you can take advantage of some of these and save a few keystrokes when you type them in. with that, I think we can go into the feature demo. Ryan wants to take over.
Yeah, so I'll come back to the playgrounds to show you some of the neat things we've done here. So one cool thing is added the query tabs. So now, I can start doing queries in multiple queries at once. And if I navigate away and come back, I'll have my queries still saved. So that's a good enhancement for the developer experience. Another neat thing is around these errors that we've now added, or not errors, but warnings for our users. So if you're running pre-aggregations in internal mode, i.e. you're storing your pre-aggregations on your source database, then you'll see this warning that, for better performance, you may want to consider using external pre-aggregations, hopefully on Cube Store, rather than keeping them on your internal your source database. Another neat thing is the rollup designer. So if I'm going to run a query and I haven't accelerated it with a pre-aggregation yet, I just click on this link and I can see, oh, hey, like I can actually create my own pre-aggregation pretty easily for this query. So this is the pre-aggregation that I can literally just copy and paste over into my schema, and it should match this particular query. I can, change things about it if I don't really, if I need to, and that those changes will be reflected in the pre-aggregation definition. So we're really excited about this one. We're continuing to iterate on it as well. So if any of you have any thoughts or feedback on the rollup designer, we're more than happy to hear it. With that, I'll go back to give it over back to Hassan to talk about a few other changes.
Thanks, Ryan. I really hope people find the rollup designer as cool as we do. So a few more notable changes to Cube.js. The unified setup experience, which Ryan mentioned early on, whether you're using Docker or NPM, you'll get the database connection wizard. So both, no matter which way you get set up, you will get the same experience. When you generate new schemas from the playground, they will come with a pre-aggregation section, so you don't have to define one yourself. ClickHouse and MongoDB now optimize. ClickHouse and MongoDB now support batching for optimized pre-aggregation build times. Quite a mouthful. So you won't actually need to do anything to enable this. This will just work out of the box if you're using those databases. For Postgres, MySQL, and Elasticsearch, read-only is now true by default, which means that if you're using those databases, we won't be storing anything on those databases, and everything will just work with an external database for pre-aggregations. Refresh key queries are now executed in Cube Store, not your database. These you may have seen, especially if you have looked at your query logs, these refresh key queries getting run. So this will be really helpful for reducing load on your database. And then nice side benefit of cleaner logs, because we aren't running refresh key queries every minute or hour or whatever it's set to. The last notable change is adding support for coalesce, date add, and other SQL functions to Cube Store. If you were using those in your schema definitions, these should now work. There are a few more that we've added support for, but the complete list will be in the release notes. If you require any others, please do let us know through email or on the Cube Store channel on Slack, or by opening an issue on GitHub. And with that, I just wanted to go over the terminology that we've been using internally to sort of make it clear what we're referring to when we're talking about certain parts of a deployment. So in Cube.js, in a typical deployment, there'll be several services. With regard to Cube.js specifically, we generally have an API instance and a refresh worker. And API instances are specifically for serving requests received from your application, from users making changes in a dashboard, for example. And their job is to simply return results pre-aggregated, ideally. The refresh worker in this scenario, its job is to keep those results up to date. And it does this in coordination with Cube Store, as you can see in the diagram. So the important terminology we wanted to make sure everyone knew was API instance and refresh worker, the two separate things. It's Cube.js, but they are two modes that Cube.js can run in, which you can set with an environment variable. Further to that, we have a Cube Store cluster, which has a router node and worker nodes, and then a Redis cluster. And these are all what you would expect to find in a typical deployment. In a Docker-based deployment, these things may be services. Usually, you'd have a separate service for your API instance, a separate service for your refresh worker, for Cube Store, router and worker nodes, and for Redis. In a serverless deployment, you would have your API instance and refresh worker as cloud or Lambda functions, depending on whether you're using Google Cloud or AWS. Redis would still have to be managed separately because it can't be run in a serverless way. And similarly, Cube Store cannot be run serverlessly. So you'd have to deploy that separately. For a true serverless experience, I would highly recommend having a play with Cube Cloud and signing up to the wait list, because it's, as somebody who really loves serverless, it's closest you can get to it right now. But yeah, that's the terminology guide, and I'll hand it back to Ray for the Q&A.
Cool. Thanks, Hassan, Ryan, for long list of updates and demos. Any questions? I think I'm looking through both Livestream and Zoom chat to see if there are any outstanding questions. I don't see any, but any other questions before we wrap up? Cool. I guess we'll just wrap up about 5 minutes early. I mean, thanks again for joining, and hopefully you have a good rest of the summer, and we'll see you either online or at the next meeting. And just a quick reminder, I'll send another notification out about the pre-aggregations webinar next month, and then instructions on where to register and et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully I'll see you all soon. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks all.